So I'm going to start off with a little story, actually. So if you don't know Joe, so Joe, PMO Joe, Joe Pusz, is a wonderful, first and foremost, a wonderful human being. I've got to know Joe over the last 5 years or so. I'm going to embarrass him now. A wonderful human being, first and foremost. So, Joe's does lots of community work. He was one of the founders and supports a charity that helps servicemen and women transition from the military into civilian life, which is a great cause. I was lucky to meet one of his team there down in Atlanta. And so first and foremost, tremendous human being, but he's also tremendously knowledgeable about PMOs, project management, been doing it forever, right? The Greeks actually used to call Joe in to help them with their big projects. Yeah, he's got the beard. That's it. We got the beard.
Very Aristotle looking, I think, today.
Indeed. And bizarrely, Joe and I met physically for the first time in Atlanta last year at the PMI conference there. And then just a couple of months later, we bump into each other again in Paris at the PMO Global Alliance. And I was sort of pulling Joe's leg a little bit, as you do, right? So if you've been on our webinars before, you will know that I have a mouth, and sometimes that mouth gets me into trouble and writes checks that the rest of me then has to cash. So I'm pulling Joe's leg, and I'm like, hey Joe, hey Joe, hey Joe, God, you must be fed up with this, right? Because you must have had that your whole life. I'm really sorry. But one of these days, I'm going to learn how to play that on the guitar. I'm a terrible guitarist. I'm really very, very bad. But I'm going to learn how to play it on guitar. And Joe turned to me, cool as a cucumber, and just said, hey, we've got a webinar in January. So you got to do it.
I set the stage. I put the challenge out, right?
Absolutely, you did. So, Joe Pusz, my friend, here we go.
Oh boy.
Hey Joe, where you going? Where you going with that plan in your hand? Hey Joe, I said, where you going with that project plan in your hand?
Where's the gray?
Isn't he? Going down to see my end users, to build a plan if we can. Yeah, going down to see my end users. We're gonna build a change management plan. Hey Joe, heard you shut your budget down. So, hey Joe, heard you shut your budget down to the ground. Hey Joe, I heard you crashed your timeline down, all the way down. Here we go. So there you go. Don't ever challenge me, Joe.
That is awesome. Oh, hey, I saw in that video, maybe we should have done AC/DC. So the next one, we'll come up with an AC/DC riff for you to go with. But I love the words, even better than the guitar is the words you did. That's awesome. Thanks, Stuart.
Hey, listen, man. When you are as inspirational a leader in the community as you are, it is a great pleasure to pay homage and, frankly, to pull your leg just a little bit, right?
I don't know who that one guy was with the thin face and the no gray in his goatee. Man, that was a long time ago.
Couldn't believe it when I found that one. So anyway, it's Joe Pusz, everybody. Here he is. And what we're going to do today, we're going to be talking about the power of and, right? Strategy and execution. This came out of a conversation we had just before the holidays, and we were talking about, hey, what gets in the way. And we sort of figured out that a lot of it is about mindset, right? Where people get locked into a mindset of either, either it's about business strategy, or we're executing, or we're doing something else, right? And of course, the answer is that the world isn't like that. So Joe has actually put some work in, which I'm delighted to see, Joe, for
Woohoo!
once. Woo! And put a few slides together, which we will use to steer the conversation. So, Joe, over to you, my friend. And I feel like I am now entitled to say, "Hey, Joe."
Yeah, now you've earned it now, right? That was fantastic. And I see in the comments someone says dirty deeds done dirt
Oh,
cheap.
that's hysterical.
We'll say as long as it's not highway to hell, I guess, right?
Well, we could do that one as well. Oh,
No,
you got me
I
going there.
have written a blog post out on the PMO Squad website. You can go find it. I think it was 50 AC/DC songs and compiled them into a poem of project management based off of the verses of Let There Be Rock. So I
Excellent.
do have some AC/DC stuff already
All
out
right.
there published.
So if we have time at the end, I'll get the guitar. I'll try and remember how to play "Let There Be Rock," and you can sing. You can sing your verses.
Well, we don't want to hurt anybody. We don't know if we want to sing.
Yeah, actually, do you know what Alan says? Wow, a free concert too. Some people pay extra for that. Alan, I think people were paying to get out, mate. I think they were paying to escape.
It's the Hotel California. You could check out, but you can never leave.
Okay, don't take me there, Joe.
So here, as Stuart and I were chatting, he mentioned, right, the conversation we were having last year, and I had said to him, this reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Morris Chang, who's the founder and CEO of Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC, as many people know them, right? And they're one of the largest, if not the largest, semiconductor company in the world. And Morris Chang is a project portfolio champion, whether he knows it or not, with this quote he had, right? Strategy, without strategy, execution is aimless, and without execution, strategy is useless, right? You can do one or the other, but they don't have the same power, right? The same influence, the same impact separately. It's the coming together of those two items that really brings the power to our PMOs, our organizations, and our profession. But that's not the way we've approached this, right? As an industry, we have groups like PMI and Prince and IPMA and others who have focused on the practitioner and getting you certified to deliver projects better. And we haven't had as much focus on the organization or the PMO to be able to bring those two things together. And I think as we want to break through in our industry and start truly delivering value, we talk about value delivery all the time, right? But talking about it and doing it become two very different things. And, the old saying, talk is cheap, right? We've got to get to the point where we stop talking about stuff and start delivering on stuff, right? And start actually bringing that here. So I'm with Morris Chang. I'm about, let's bring these two together. This is the power of and changing our mindset to be able to get there. But that's not a standalone item, right? I can think that, Stuart can think that, everybody can think that independently, but where do we see, what are we seeing in data? And for those of you who know Rachel Henches, and she does previously with Keyed In, but Cyforma purchased them, and each year they've been putting together their PMO Outlook report, and Rachel just released that for Cyforma last week. And there's some great data in there that talks to some of these things. We don't have to read these verbatim, but a couple of things that stand out to me. 81% of the respondents said they don't have enough resources to meet their demand. So if you don't have the resources, how can you have good execution? And if you don't have good execution, if we use the Morris Chang quote, how are you going to be able to deliver on strategy? Right? And then from an alignment perspective, 82% of projects are not very well aligned with strategic business priorities. So you don't have enough people. We're not aligned to strategy. So we're having challenges with execution, and we're not even delivering on strategy anyway. So our industry is full of challenges, right? How do we as leaders in that industry figure out how to overcome the challenges? Getting more people certified doesn't matter if we don't have enough people to work on the projects to deliver anyway. Getting more people certified doesn't matter if we're not working on strategically aligned projects. How do we know that? Well, number 3, 67% of project practitioners had a project fail in the past year. So we can continue to do the same thing over and over and over and over again, but I'm the guy with the gray in his beard, not that skinny young guy from before. That's what the old Joe would have done. I would have kept doing what everybody has been doing. I would follow the flock, line up, and just keep repeating the same mistakes we've been making. But me, the older, grayer, wiser, less energetic Joe, says, why don't we try to solve this? What's causing this? If we can figure out what's causing this, perhaps we can overcome that. Perhaps we can actually do something to change it. So then I go into my investigation mode, right? What can I find? What's causing this? In the Western world, there's a very deep integration, inauguration, induction, whatever word you want to use, from a very young age of dualism. We're either going to do this or we're going to do that, right? It's black or white. It's good or evil. It's Coke or Pepsi, right? It's a choice that we have to make, that we're going to focus on one thing or the other. And we're missing the bigger picture of how do we benefit, perhaps when we can do a different mindset. Instead of either or thinking, what happens, right, if we change that? Duality is a limiting factor, right? Your choices are restricted to just the things that are presented to you. But does that actually help us problem solve? Because what if the choices are both not accurate, both wrong? What if there isn't a right answer amongst the choices? Right? Is it possible to be happy and sad at the same time? Right? I think in today's mindset, it's I'm either happy or I'm sad.
So there was an equivalent conversation to this. It raged for 20 years or something in business strategy. It was Henry Mintzberg and see if I can remember who else it was. But anyway, these two kind of titans of business strategy duking out about does the structure of an organization drive its strategy, or does its strategy drive its structure, right? And eventually Mintzberg kind of realized that they were falling foul of this dualism approach. It's one or the other. And he realized that it's both. So he turned it into a metaphor that, it's like walking, right? You put one foot, where you are today, your structure today, drives the strategy, the strategy options you have. So then you pick your strategy and then you change your structure to achieve it. And then that limits your strategy. So then you pick your strategy. So it's like walking, it's both and. You've got to do both, and they've got to reference each other, and they've got to be deliverable. It was a really interesting sort of parallel to, we're talking about this in the context of projects. They were talking about it in the context of strategy and organizational structure. But this same breaking the either or paradigm was the solution to that. It took them 20 years to figure that out.
It's taken me 55, right? To figure out on my side. But when you work like PMO Squad, we're out at clients all the time, helping them improve PMOs, providing consultants to deliver projects better. and you start looking at those client experiences and where do we see commonality? What is broke, and then what do we fix? And inevitably, what we find out is they focus on, are we either going to deliver projects better, or are we going to align with strategy? And that got to me thinking, that ultimately leads to this discussion today of the problem is our mindset, right? We've limited ourselves to think we have to do one or the other, right? The both and mindset allows us to think, yes, it's okay to be happy and sad at the same time. If my grandmother, who's been suffering with dementia or Alzheimer's for years, is suffering in a nursing home and passes away, I'm sad that she's passed away, but I'm also happy that she's no longer suffering. It's okay to be happy and sad. It's okay to work on strategy and execution, but you have to have the mindset that's open to do that. You have to get out of that box that we've painted for ourselves and think that it's one or the other, and start thinking about, how do we do change? That's where I think the mindset shift allows us to start structuring things in a way that we can actually do things differently. Because what we do is we don't paint our own box, we paint the box for everybody that we interact in. So the organization, if we're a PMO leader or we're a project manager and we're delivering projects and we're focused solely on the execution, then that's what the organization perceives that we can do. The organization doesn't understand that there's an and opportunity there, because we're the experts. We're supposed to know if there's an and opportunity. And if we're not bringing that change, that new thinking, that new technique, the experiments to the organization, then it's not just us we're restricting the capabilities of everyone. The whole company is now impacted by this. So for me, if we truly want to be able to try to drive value, the origin of that has to be mindset. It is a capability question first and foremost. Can we do more than one thing at a time? I can walk and chew gum, right? I don't have to do one or the other. So this is the mindset shift, right? And this is where we start going and start thinking about change.
And I first came across this idea, I don't know, I was at a conference 25 years ago. And it was a conference about of all things, gosh, it must be 30 years ago. I was still a student. Anyway, of all things, it was about recycling and waste reduction and all that kind of good stuff. And the speaker got up as a not quite graduated student, right? The speaker got up and said, yeah, I'm a futurologist and I'm going to tell you all about the future, right? So first of all, I'm sitting there going, now that's a cool job. How do you get that job? Still haven't figured that one out. But he stood up and he talked about, people are talking about the environment as if it is an either or decision, right? Is it either the environment or the economy? And he was preaching 30 years ago, both and, right? You could, and so it's, this isn't just about project management. This is about everything in life, right? Usually, most situations are both and mindset will get you further than an either or mindset. And, Joe, as you said earlier, we're in the West in particular, we're really trained, right? Our political system, our legal system, the clubs and societies in school, that the debating societies and everything else, we're trained to think that it's an either or world, and it's not, right? And it's so liberating when you get this realization. And I didn't get it straight away. It was kind of an interesting, I remember the talk very clearly. So obviously it made an impression, but I didn't really understand what he was telling me until years and years later.
Well, it's hard to overcome all of that indoctrination we go through, right? Right. And sometimes you see it, but until you're put in the middle of it, sometimes it's hard to really overcome it. With our children, we do the same thing, right? You can either do this or do that, right? Which chore are you going to do? Well, you have to either clean your room or vacuum the house. Well, why can't you clean your room and vacuum the house, right? Academically, I'm going to either pursue this degree or that degree. Well, why not a degree and a minor, right? You can still pursue both of them. But if we narrow our thinking, then we limit ourselves. I don't want to be limited anymore.
Crazy example of how wide-ranging this philosophy can be, right? So I have 15-year-old twin boys, and they're in the middle of doing a set of exams right now, some big exams. And so a few weeks ago, one of my boys really loves badminton. So he wanted to go to badminton club, but he knew that by the time he went for a couple hours of club, half an hour each direction, it's 3.5 hours out of his evening, right? That basically means no revision. So he had an either or decision to make, badminton or revision. And to his credit, he said, no, it's not an either or decision. It's a both and decision. And he packed his chemistry books and he took him to the badminton court. And whenever he was not on court, he sat on a chair and he did revision. And do you know what? He discovered one of the people in the club has a PhD in chemistry and sat down with him and started helping him revise his chemistry, right? So that's what happens when you have a both and mindset. You can get more done, and sometimes happy things like someone comes across and helps you with chemistry happen that mean you achieve more than you would have done if you tried to do one or the other. But there's a bit more to it than that, which I know you've got later in your slide, so I'll shut up now.
Well, I'll even piggyback that with the example you mentioned at the beginning, how we saw each other in Atlanta and then we saw each other in Paris. My thinking through the summer last year was I'm going to Atlanta or Paris. And I went to Atlanta. It was first. So I chose that one. But while I was there having a conversation with Americo, he says, come on, Joe, you got to go to Paris. So my mindset of being open to an and opportunity allowed me to say yes to that opportunity, where we then got to engage with several others who I had known for years and years and years online, but never met in person. So having that and creates so many different opportunities. And, a show kid wrote in here, what about when there's conflict, right? And this isn't saying you have to have both and all the time.
That's right.
It's having the opportunity to use both and not either or all the time. It's utilizing both in the right scenario when it makes sense.
That's right. And to look for those false dichotomies, those times when people say it's either this or that, when actually there's a third option, right? Which is some balance between them. Sometimes it really is this or that. You've got one resource, you've got two projects, they both need that person. So what are we going to do with them? Because they can't do both, or at least not efficiently. So you're going to pick one or the other, right? So sometimes it really is either or. But even in that situation, you can ask questions about, well, is there someone else that can do some of this for the other project, or some piece of it for the other project, and get a start going, get the documentation done, get the requirements written up, something like that, right? So even in those situations where it really is one or the other, if you have that both and mindset, you can often find a way to at least prepare for the second phase.
And it's been used historically as a source of power as well. If I create the options for you to choose from, I win either way.
Yeah.
Right. I'm giving you the perception of choice, although both choices were acceptable to me and neither of them were acceptable to you. But by me giving you choice, I've given you the false impression now that you were actually in charge. This has happened throughout history all of the time. We can either go here or we can go there. I didn't want to go to either. But when the only choices presented to me were to choose, then I'm again restricted. So that's where we're headed with this, right? Is the mindset change.
Absolutely.
So how do we integrate that into organizations so that we can do execution and strategy? And what we've done at the PMO Squad, again, is analyzed over the past 11 years we've been in business, our client engagements, and what do we find? And what we found is a lot of the PMOs that we're working to improve are actually really good PMOs. The problem isn't the PMO. The problem is the organization's messed up. So we built a model that we called organizational project delivery. What is the capability of the organization to deliver projects and their approved portfolio? I'll give you an example. Everyone knows about this, right? We go back to the stats from the Sciforma study. 81% of projects didn't have enough resources, right? Most PMOs, almost every PMO we've ever worked with, has a documented process that's been approved and signed off of how a project manager requests resources to work on a project. Usually it goes along the lines of go into the system, make the system request to the resource manager to get John Doe to work on the project. John Doe approves it, and then Jane Doe is now a member of the project team, right? It's documented. Everybody knows it. The system has been implemented. The checks have been cut. That's the way to do it. But the resource manager doesn't acknowledge the request that's made. The organization capability has been limited by the resource manager, not by the PMO. The PMO put in a structured project delivery process to deliver it. So the organization's not capable. We have been focused so long in our industry inward. What do we need to do to get better? And we haven't been focusing our attention on the organization, what the organization needs to do to get better.
And I'm going to take that that example of yours a little bit further, which is that, in all likelihood, there's no clear prioritization coming from the leadership team or from the prioritization process to help that resource manager make these decisions. So what ends up happening is that they make these either or decisions, because those ones are either or decisions, right?
Yeah.
So they make these either or decisions, which means that basically you're a resource manager who might be a lower mid-level manager with maybe 5 direct reports or something, right? That person is effectively making decisions about the strategic direction, strategic allocation of resources for the corporation.
That's right.
That can't be right. That's an organizational problem, not a project management problem.
Absolutely. And don't we think we would actually execute projects better if they were strategically aligned? Because that sets priority, that gives resource alignment, right? That gives sponsor involvement because they've prioritized their projects. Keeping them separate actually is detrimental to both of them. When we bring them together, they influence one another to actually perform better at both of them, right? And both wins in that type of example.
Absolutely.
So what does that look like, right? I mentioned we PMO squad studied this, we analyzed it, we went back through all of our data, and we said through multiple paths, right? Another component of this was being a judge in the PMO Global Awards and looking at the best PMOs in the world. One of the items that's part of that judging criteria is your PMO's journey. And so I took that and I said, man, that's a really powerful statement. What does that look like in real life? I know people in the contest are telling us the journey that went on, but how about people who are paying for our service? And we started to see trends. We started to see data that was there. All organizations, we haven't seen any exceptions to this yet. Are they out there? I'm sure they are, but we've not found any. Every organization in every industry, regardless of size company, goes through this 5-step journey. The first thing they do when project management gets introduced in the organization is it's getting done, right? It's ad hoc. People who aren't project managers are doing project managers. There's no titles, there's no templates, there's no PMO. But guess what? Every company does projects. So whether or not we call them a project, whether or not we're using Microsoft Office or project plans or whatever, it's still a project. So it's ad hoc. We're just doing it. And then along the way, some leader usually says, man, Joe, remember that project you did and you had that status report that you were using? I really like that status report. Can we use that same status report on every project? And now we have the introduction of standardization. So the ad hoc projects are now being run a little bit more uniformly, right? They're starting to say, hey, if we actually track risks and issues, we have a better chance of fixing them or overcoming them or mitigating them than if we didn't have something to track them, right? So standardization is that next step beyond it. So the organization is evolving. This isn't the project manager. This isn't the PMO. I'm talking the journey of the organization. The organization has accepted the fact that we're going to use the same status reports. But the organization hasn't accepted how we do resource management. So they get stuck between 2 and 3, right? The third one is the organization has now bought into project delivery. This is the way we deliver projects. They implement a PMO, they bring on people, and all of a sudden the PMO builds an SOP, a playbook. Here's how we're going to deliver, right? Standardized starts to get matured. This isn't a maturity model. This is a capability model. Now, all of a sudden,
that's an important statement, Joe. What's the difference between the two?
maturity, right, is you can consistently, repeatedly do the same thing over and over again, and you know the results you're going to get from doing it, right? That's your maturity. We are very mature because we've built an enterprise resource management process, and we're going to follow that process over time. Capability is, how well do you follow the processes that you've built? You may be a mature 10-year-old PMO that has built great processes, but you don't have the capability to execute on them. Maturity is good. Capability wins the day. I'll go capability all day long. Yeah, the CMMI, right, is out there, and there's different ways to measure those as well.
Absolutely. By the way, I bet it's cold where you are, Chris. Goodness gracious. Stay warm, my friend. So there's a piece here, right? So you've drawn this sequentially. I'm not convinced it has to be sequential, and I'm not sure these things always follow on one from another, because some of these things could happen in parallel, right? But I think this is a really nice way of sort of organizing what needs to happen to get to the box on the right. And I'm a big fan of right to left thinking when I see things like this, right? So starting on the right hand side and working backwards. And actually, we've got a couple of people on from Dubai, I think I saw earlier on, and other spots out in the Middle East. So if you were doing this in Arabic, would you draw this chart the same way around? So I'm asking you guys a question. I'm hoping for an answer on the chat. If you were drawing this chart, would you have number 1 on the right hand side? Because I know you Arabic, you right to left, but would you swap the chart around? Just a silly little question. But anyway, so right to left thinking here is where then you flip it around. You say, well, rather than what's the journey that people typically take, you can say, what are the capabilities that we need to build to get here, and how can we accelerate that process?
Absolutely, right. And this is the way to look at the 3-2. You need acceptance first, right?
You're killing me. That's hysterical. Nicely done.
Here's my view on this as well. Projects deliver benefits. Portfolios deliver value. So a lot of organizations, when we present this to them, they always say, you mean I don't start generating value to the end? I thought every project's supposed to create value. I'm like, well, of course it does. But really, it's the project is the benefit, right? You're getting individualized benefits. But to truly, and there's Rachel. Hi, welcome, Rachel, right? To get the true value out of a PMO for project delivery, how does an organization generate that? Is when the organization starts making decisions based on their ability to deliver projects. That's when you know you're creating value for the organization, right? Upfront delivering projects better, having a standardized process, that's helpful. To your point, Stuart, these things overlap, right? It's not you hit one and then you get to the next. That's why we call it a journey, right? You're achieving and getting benefits each step along this way. This is organizational thinking, not individual-based thinking. So the organizational breakthrough on this of how does an organization get value from delivering projects? Because they've gotten to the point where the 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all a yes. We've achieved all of those points at this point. The organizations that win PMO of the year from the PMO Global Alliance, they don't worry about acceptance anymore. They don't worry about strategic alignment anymore. They have multi-billion-dollar budgets because the organization knows the organization is capable of delivering on that, and that creates value. So per project, you're at different stages of this journey. Per person, you're at different stages of this journey, but the organization cumulatively travels along this journey. And there's overlap along the way because, again, there's different people and different projects at different parts of it. But the organization has one strategic planning session, right? Or cycle that they work within. If the PMO is not there, I guarantee you the organization hasn't accepted the project delivery process yet.
So Joe, it turns out that Rachel, so you were quoting the keyed-in research that Rachel punted out last week.
Yep.
Turns out Rachel's on the call, and she's chattering away here, and she says, projects deliver benefits, portfolios deliver value. I think I would probably phrase it differently. I'm half tempted to bring her into the conversation and have an argument, but I don't think that would help us. And I think the you know, to me, portfolios should be about delivering your strategy, right? Which is a slightly different thing to just delivering value. But set that aside, right? The key thing here is that you know, this whole process is around delivering, you know, a return a return on investment in projects, right? And that return is measured against your strategy, right? So ROI is not, you know, most people think of ROI as being a purely financial metric. It's not, right? You can have a business return, a return on your investment that is not financial at all. You know, if you're a government agency, your return on investment isn't financial. It's about services delivered to citizens, right? But whatever it is, right? This is about building an organizational model that maximizes the ROI on your portfolio projects, on your strategy, your strategic investments. And when you think of it that way, suddenly this either or thing disappears, right? Because everything is about that ROI, right? So do we want to improve our execution model? Yes, we do, because that means we're going to have fewer cost overruns, more projects hitting their benefits, their stated goals, and that improves our ROI. Do we want to align with our strategy? Yes, we do, because if we can eliminate that 20% of projects that are just not aligned, then we will improve our ROI. Do we want to improve the way we resource projects? Yes, we do, because when people are multitasking, they're less efficient and we will deliver fewer projects, so we will improve our ROI. Sometimes the effect is at the project level, right? So you know, when you have good templates and processes and all that kind of good stuff, that's at the project level. Sometimes it's at the portfolio level, right? So when you're doing your resource planning, right, that's a portfolio level activity that increases the velocity of project delivery. It should do if you're doing it right. And then when you do so that's at the portfolio level. And then when you're doing prioritization properly and your strategic alignment properly, that value is accruing at the organizational level, at the strategic level, right? So you have this value. It's operating all these different levels in the organization, and you know, in a way, you know, the PMO is a key actor. I won't say the only actor or even the lead actor, but they are one of the key actors in pulling all of those pieces together to make sure that they all fit together nicely, right? And that they're all mutually supporting each other and even kind of synergistic. Because when you do good execution and you do good alignment, for example, right, those effects multiply together. If you can improve execution by 20% and alignment by 20%, right, you've increased effectiveness by 44%. Wow, that's huge, right?
The challenge we run into, I buy into all of that, right? Practically, when we go into organizations to consult with them, what we hear is the either or scenario. We need to do either operations or projects. We can't do operations and projects. That's why this is an organizational change as opposed to a PMO or a project change. We want to change the mindset within the organization that projects are operations. It's just a different chapter in the operating manual on how does the organization operationally deliver projects. Projects are changed, therefore they're counter to what operations is, which is kind of the repeatable day-to-day work we do. But that doesn't mean it's not part of the operating rhythm of a company. If the organization accepts that projects and change are normal, then you should be baked into the operations of the organization.
Love it.
That's the breakthrough thought process with all of this. It's not operations or projects. It's operations, which includes projects. It's an and thinking. It's both, right? So the breakthrough moment for us when we work with organizations along these lines is we start to get them involved at the executive level, and we start asking them the same questions you were just talking about. Are your projects aligned to your strategy? Is your execution followed by everybody in the organization? And it's always no, they're not. We know we have examples of that. So then I go back and I say, let's look at things that are repeatable and consistent and accepted today. The accounting department owns the invoicing process. They send out the invoices and they receive the payments. Does somebody in marketing have the authority to go send invoices and receive payments? Is that acceptable in the organization? No, they've reached a capability of level 3. Organization has accepted that. Nobody does that. That's how the company operates. So you're already following this for probably 1,000 different processes already within your organization, where a specialty organization sets the process, the organization accepts that, strategically the organization operates that way, and you generate value because there's only one set of people who are doing invoicing. Yet on projects, you have accidental project managers throughout your organization running projects that you don't even know are in your portfolio, for managers who are working on pet projects, pulling resources away from the strategic initiatives. It's not the project management team that's at fault. It's the organization which is out of alignment. So when we start to work and have those sorts of discussions with clients, they're like, mind blown. We never viewed this way. It's a breakthrough moment for people in our industry.
So Joe, let's bring it down just for a second, if I may, because as we're thinking of both and thinking, right? So often people, when they're at sort of that level 2, level 3 sort of level, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where there's a real danger in that zone, which is that you become the process police, right? And you get so much process and so many templates, and it's all very rigid that you lose the creativity. So it's process versus flexibility and creativity, because often project management is about creativity and problem solving as much as it is about process and everything else.
Yeah, no doubt.
So do you have any thoughts on how to find that balance? We've talked about the organizational balance and the strategy balance, but just a minute or two on how do you find that, how do you discover that balance? Because it's going to be different for different organizations, different projects, I imagine. What are your thoughts there?
I'm a giant supporter in customer, capturing voice of customer and understanding what your customers want. They could be internal customers or external customers. Ask them. Ask the people who are your sponsors or your project team members or the people who are involved in writing business cases and charters. Is our process overweight? What do you see value? Where do you not see value? What can we cut back on and what can we streamline? The objective of the project is the outcome. It's not the process to get to the outcome, right? So the people who are involved in that, the external eyes, sometimes, we can't see the forest through the trees because we're stuck in the middle of it. Go ask people. Be willing to be told your process stinks. And you're willing to do that because you're now having a both and mindset as opposed to an either or. It's not my way or your way. It could be your way and my way for the optimization process to be able to work for the company, right? It's okay to have somebody tell you something's not working.
And I think there's an acknowledgement in there as well. Because I obviously have an opinion here.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, surprise, surprise, it's me and that mouth again. But there's an element here where, in principle, I think it should be the process should be as light as it can be to provide the support that the people need, that your team needs to get stuff done. That's a general principle, but I think you've nailed it on the head. The way to discover where that is is to engage those stakeholders, to engage those users of the process and say, which bits of the process are helping you? Which bits are getting in the way? Which bits are missing? What do you wish we were doing that we're not doing? Right. And then just strip out. And so part of this way of thinking is about flexibility and change and adaptability. Because as people get used to working in a particular way, you said it earlier that sometimes you can actually take some of those controls away and trust the organization to do stuff because it's embedded, right? So then you can get rid of some of those processes and templates and just let the organization get on with it and find the right balance themselves and be more efficient that way, more flexible. So anyway, carry on.
We're a service organization, right? We're a service entity, and guess what? A million other service companies figured this out decades ago. All we have to do is follow suit with the people that already know how to do this, right? Restaurants, right? You walk in, you sit down, you're greeted, you place an order, and you want to be served all within, say, 30 minutes time. And then somebody comes out afterwards and says, how was your meal? How was your experience? We're no different than a restaurant. Our menu better not be too big. It better be precise enough that people can get what they want. Our kitchen, our PM process, or PMO, better be able to produce the food and the budget and the timeline that the customer expected, right? We're a service industry. Let's learn from other folks in the service industry. So how do we do that? How do we get the organization to change this either or mindset, operations or project delivery? Well, we have to be the agents of change, right? They're not going to change. They're already doing operations. They're the ones saying that we're the outlier. So we have to create direction, right? We have to let them know what this looks like. We have to give them the stage to be able to say, here's how we integrate to them and work to build that alignment so that we're not working us versus them. That's the way it's always been. It's the ops guys hate to get on the project because it's pulling them away from their day job. Well, guess what? The project is to improve your day job. That's why you're on this project. You should be happy to be on that because you're actually an agent of change for operations. Stop thinking that these are separate entities. We have to align our organization to all be working towards the same execution and then give them the motivation to do that.
So one quick thing there is, this is one of those areas where having an explicit both and discussion can be really useful, because often some of that resistance isn't really because they don't want to change or they don't want to be on the project. I think it's because they are given the project to do, and right, problem with both and they got to do the day job at the same time. And so that's where the both and thinking actually means that you need to help them have that conversation with their boss to figure out how do we resolve that both and conflict, because we need to get the day job done, but we can't do that at the same time. You can't do that fully loaded job at the same time as properly contributing to landing the change, this benefit that we're looking for from this project. So that's where you start to have the conversation that says, great, so you want me to spend half my time on the project. That means we need to find another way of getting these tasks done in the business, right, in operations. So
because they have either or mindset, right? I'm either doing my job or I'm working on my project.
And so if you can flip that to a both and mindset and both and discussion, then you can find solutions to that. But
and the approach, right, the direction is project delivery is your day job, right? It's your day job and project delivery that makes up operations, right? It's this change in mindset. There's a lot of talk Antonio Nieto Rodriguez has out there about the chief project officer kind of usurping the chief operating officer, because we're now in the project economy and more revenue is being generated from projects than it is from operations. And I don't disagree with any of that kind of discussion. I think it's up for debate, but I'd say it's going to take a long time for organizations to throw away the COO role and introduce a chief project role. So why are we trying to fight upstream on this process that's been put in place for thousands of years now? We should be saying we're actually part of operations, right? It's not one or the other, it's one and the other. And your day job is running projects or being involved in projects and doing your day job, building the widgets. It's both of them. So we have to drive that change though, because we're the outlier. right? We're sitting on the bottom right corner of the org chart, the little PMO on the side, and the rest of it, 90% of the organization or 95% of the organization is operations. So we have to work our way in and provide a direction and vision for them that they understand and agree with. And it has to start at the top down, right? You're not going to be able to build a grassroots effort for that because we don't have the authority in the organization to do that. So when you do that, you get results, right? But you can't do that alone. But we found that in the industry, and the way we get there, right, is partnership, right? People on the call, I don't know if they even know this or not, right, Stuart, but we're partners, right? PMO Squad and Transparent Choice are partners.
We are.
And
Yeah.
we're working together to be able to provide end-to-end solutions for clients out there. Same way as when we're in there working within organizations, you can be one and the other. You can be operations and project delivery. It's connected. Having that and mindset is powerful and is able to do that. So as we're thinking direction, as we're thinking alignment, as we're thinking motivation, think partnership. How can I, on the project delivery team, be your partner on your operating daily widget making and actually help the company make more widgets, which means we both get raised, we both get increases in our positions and our authority. It's that sort of mindset is we're partners. We need to be able to move forward to make sure that happens.
And I'm going to be obnoxious. I'm going to start writing on your slide now because I can. So I think there's the third party, which is you guys in here, where this partnership looks a bit like this, and so this is the voice of experience again. It's really tough to do the PMO day job and engineer this change at the same time, right? Because everything Joe just said about operations, well, the PMO has you have your operations that you're doing day to day, and they don't stop just because you're trying to change the way that you work within the organization. So there's clearly we're seeing your email right now, Joe. I don't know if that's what you wanted.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. So there's a lot of value in this partnership in terms of being able to share that transformational load, being able to leverage the expertise of somebody like the PMO squad and Joe's team, and being able to leverage tools that help you on that journey, that are the scaffolding that help hold the organization in place. A tool will not solve your problem. No tool. Rachel, if you're still on, plug your ears, right? No tool will solve your problem, right? It's changing the organizational behavior that solves any problem. The tool is just scaffolding to help you do that, right? So again, it's this both and mindset, right? Just jumping in and buying software isn't the answer. You got to do that, and you've got to have the organizational transformational thinking that goes with it and the experience that goes with it. So it's the combination of those three that lets you keep the operations of the PMO running and manage a transformation to level 4, level 5 in Joe's model.
And there was a comment from Ashok that says, Joe, PMO simply don't have the authority to push such great options. And I'll push back and challenge and say, I've seen hundreds of PMOs through the PMO Global Alliance competition and the organizations that we've helped that would say you're wrong. They do. It may not be every PMO. It may not be how you're currently constructed. But if you can bring ROI to executives, they'll listen. And that's the whole point of this, is how can we, as Stuart was talking just a moment ago, right, about how can we utilize execution and strategy to improve ROI for organizations? That's what organizations are in the business of. If we can show them how we can generate more ROI for the organization, they'll listen. The problem is we've historically said, we don't do that. We focus on execution. We don't focus on value creation. So you're right. Historically, we haven't done that. We've positioned ourselves within organizations as the part of the company that doesn't get to do that. What we need to do is change that mindset. We have to go to an and mindset. We can be what we are today, and we can create value for the organization. If we don't have that mindset, we'll be stuck. We'll never be able to make progress. So is that an easy lift? Heck no, that's hard work. That's why the PMO squad exists, to be able to go in and help organizations do that. But there are companies around the world that are delivering on that value today because their PMO is engaged at the highest level of the organization, and they've agreed to empower them to go deliver. Stop messing with that slide, Stuart.
That's me told. Excellent. And just a final thought as we wrap up. So, you know, Joe and I are really lucky because we get to meet all kinds of really cool people. We were both in Paris for the PMO Global Alliance Awards. And, you know, Heba, who won the Global Award, you know, Best PMO Award, I know Heba, and she is just lovely. And had the chance to get to know some of the other winners from this year as well. In Paris, and some of them still having conversations afterwards. And I got to tell you, every single one of them has this mindset, right? So there is a direct link between at least your peers ranking you and saying, yeah, you're top dog, and this kind of both and mindset, strategy and execution. You got to do both. So fantastic. Joe, I really appreciate, as ever. I'm sorry we've run out of time.
Yeah, not me, because now I don't have to sing, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you know, we can stay on the line for a few minutes. But you know, it's been a really interesting conversation. A lot of fun. People seem to have really enjoyed it. What I would encourage you all to do is reach out to Joe, reach out to me on LinkedIn or directly, and you know, share your experiences, ask questions. If you're struggling with some of these ideas, you know, just ask some questions, and you'll find there are people here to support you. It's a little bit like Harry Potter. I don't know if there are any Harry Potter fans on here. Again, I've got teenage boys, so I don't have much choice in the matter. But it's, you know, help will be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it.
Absolutely.
So do reach out. Joe and I love doing this. We love working with and supporting the community. So I look forward to hearing from you. I see a couple of you have jumped onto LinkedIn already, so that's fantastic. So thank you all for coming. We'll talk to you very soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.